Two important steps in the reporting of inventory at the end of the accounting period are the classification of inventory based on its degree of completion and the determination of inventory amounts. Determining inventory quantities involves two steps. First, taking a physical inventory of goods on hand, and second, determining the ownership of goods. This video will cover these concepts. How a company classifies its inventory depends on the company. In a merchandising company, inventory consists of many different items. For example, in a grocery store, canned goods, dairy products, meats, and produce are just a few of the inventory items on hand. These items have two common characteristics. They are owned by the company, and they are in a form ready for sale to the customers. Merchandisers need only one inventory classification, merchandise inventory or simply inventory, to describe the many items that make up total inventory. In a manufacturing company, some of their inventory may not be completed. As a result, manufacturers usually classify inventory into three categories: raw materials, work in process, and finished goods. Raw materials are the basic goods that will be used in production but have not yet been placed into production. Work in process is the portion of the inventory that has begun the production process but is not yet complete. And lastly, finished goods inventory is the items that are complete and ready for sale. You will learn more about these inventories in Accounting 2. Regardless of the classification, companies report all inventories under current assets on the balance sheet. No matter whether they are using a periodic or perpetual inventory system, all companies need to determine inventory quantities at the end of the accounting period. If you are using a perpetual system, companies take a physical inventory to check the accuracy of their inventory records, as well as to determine the amount of inventory lost due to wasted raw materials, shoplifting, or employee theft. Companies using a periodic inventory system must take a physical inventory to determine the inventory on hand, as well as to determine the cost of goods sold for the period. Companies take the physical inventory at the end of the accounting period. Taking a physical inventory involves actually counting, weighing, or measuring each kind of inventory on hand. In many companies, taking an inventory is a huge undertaking, as retailers such as Target, Home Depot have thousands of different inventory items. An inventory count is generally more accurate when a limited number of goods are being sold or received during the counting. Many companies take inventory when the business is closed or when business is slow. Many retailers close early on a chosen day in January after the holiday, sales, and returns. They count inventory when they are at their lowest levels. For example, Walmart has a year end of January 31st. Determining inventory quantities involves two steps: taking a physical inventory of goods on hand and determining the ownership of goods. One challenge in determining inventory quantities is making sure a company owns the inventory. To determine ownership of goods, two questions must be answered. Do all the goods included in the count belong to the company? Does the company own any goods that were not included in the count? A complication in determining ownership is goods in transit at the end of the period. Goods are on board a truck, train, ship, or plane, so neither the buyer nor the seller has the goods. The company may have purchased goods that have not yet been received, or it may have sold goods that have not yet been delivered. To arrive at an accurate count, the company must determine the ownership of these goods. Goods in transit should be included in the inventory of the company that has legal title to the goods. Legal title is determined by the terms of the sale. We discussed this slide in the previous chapter, and the focus was on who was responsible for the payment of the freight cost. In this chapter, we revisit the freight terms to determine who has legal title to the goods. When the terms are FOB shipping point, ownership of the goods passes to the buyer when the public carrier accepts the goods from the seller at the shipping point. When the terms are FOB destination, ownership of the goods remains with the seller until the goods reach the buyer or the destination. In some lines of business, it is common to hold the goods of other parties and try to sell the goods for them for a fee, but without taking ownership of the goods. These are called consigned goods. For example, you might have a used car that you would like to sell. If you take the car to a dealer, the dealer might be willing to put the car on its lots and charge you a commission if it's sold. Under this agreement, the dealer would not take ownership of the car. The car still belongs to you. If an inventory count were taken, the car would not be included in the dealer's inventory because the dealer does not own it. Many car, boat, and antique dealers sell goods on consignment to keep their inventory costs down and to avoid the risk of purchasing an item that they will not be able to sell. In this learning exercise, apply the rules of ownership to goods held on consignment as well as goods in transit. The solutions to this exercise will be provided in another document.